Welcome to Living Love, a podcast about how to live a heart-centered life. My name is Victoria Price, and this is episode 3, Where is Love? When I was 6 years old, my parents took me to see Oliver. It was a big deal to go to the movies, and this was my first movie musical. OMG. I adored everything about it. The singing, the dancing, the costumes, the sets, the story, the songs. But there was one scene in particular that I never forgot. When Oliver, all alone in the dark basement of that lonely London orphanage, sang "Where is Love" in his beautiful soprano little boy's voice. His song cracked open my heart. I wish I could play you the song, but you can't do that on a podcast, so here are the lyrics. Where is love? Does it fall from skies above? Is it underneath the willow tree that I've been dreaming of? Where is she who I close my eyes to see? Will I ever know the sweet hello that's meant for only me? Who can say where she may hide? Must I travel far and wide till I am beside someone who I can mean something to? Where is love? Even as a very young girl, I got it, though I certainly would not have been able to articulate it in the grown-up words I'm about to use. Oliver's plaintive plea was the impetus for everything that happened, not just to him, but to everyone in that movie. An orphaned boy desperately missing his mother, trying to believe that somehow, against all odds, he will find love, family, connection, safety, and hope. Enters a whole world of people also looking for love, wherever they can find it too. Think about it. Without understanding what drove Oliver, the whole rest of the movie doesn't make sense. He joins a band of thieves because they feel way more like family than the people who were supposed to take care of him, his own relatives, the people in the orphanage. Now, the head of that band of thieves, Fagin, purposely sets himself up as a father figure to his band of pickpocket boys, with the Artful Dodger acting like a big brother. The other male figure, Bill Sikes, is scary and mean, except when it comes to Nancy, the woman he loves, a former child prostitute and pickpocket. Nancy befriends sweet Oliver and becomes like a surrogate mother figure to him, which ends up softening Bill toward Oliver. Love. It's all love. However, at the moment in the film when Bill feels Nancy has betrayed him, he kills her, and then realizes that essentially he's killed himself. Because without love, what is life? He later dies as well. Oliver, however, despite the horrors of his young life, never loses his pure faith in the power of love. And that's what saves him in the end. That movie, it was totally clear to me as a kid, was all about love, but no one said that. Now, I want to say here that seeing that movie and hearing that song was not the first time I understood there were people in the world who didn't lead the incredibly privileged life I did. I grew up watching TV reports about the death and destruction of the Vietnam War, the hatred and hope of the civil rights movement. The nightly news brought heartbreaking images of starving children all over the world into our living room, their anguished faces, their distended bellies, and their mouths encrusted with flies shook me to my core. Obviously, Oliver's made-up movie misery could not hold a candle to what I saw every night on television. But it's easy to find ways to distance ourselves from the horrors we see and hear and read about in the news, and that's why story is so important. We humans are hardwired to learn through story. It's how we understand everything. Now, my parents were adamant that they never wanted me to be a spoiled rich kid. They always made it clear that I had been given a remarkably fortunate life as the daughter of a movie star living in a mansion in Southern California. They didn't try to shelter me, but they weren't trying to scare me either. From the time I was a little girl, I understood that with privilege comes a responsibility to give something back to to other people and to our planet. That was how they lived their lives, it was how their closest friends lived theirs, and it was how they wanted me to live mine. So what got to me about that song was that I understood for the first time that no matter what a person's story or circumstances might be, every single person in the world wants the same thing: to love and to be loved. In other words, love is the one thing that unites us. So why aren't we taught that when we're younger? Wouldn't it be so much easier if somebody straight up said, at the end of your life, all you'll remember is the love, and all you'll regret are the missed opportunities for love? And love doesn't only mean people. It means your pets, what you do for work, what you love to do in your free time, the things you do to give back. All that is love, and nothing else matters. So in everything you do, every single day, ask yourself, am I doing this with love? Am I making this choice from a place of love? Am I behaving in a loving way? Then go from there. But they don't say that. And worse, we're inundated with movies and books and TV shows in which love looks nothing like real life, and then we wonder why the heck we're so confused. For over 50 years now, the words of that song I heard in Oliver have sung themselves through my mind and heart over and over again. They've been a leitmotif of my life. Little did I know as a 6-year-old sitting between my parents in that movie theater that the question posed in that song would become the impetus for my lifelong spiritual journey. Where is love? The answer, of course, is all around us. I'm a walker. I walk 3 or 4 times a day, a short walk around the block to clear my head, or longer walks in any direction. Yes, I walk for my dog, Allie. I walk because I drive a lot and need to stretch my legs, because I work at a computer all day and need to get away from a screen, and because I live in a tiny home where the walls start to close in. Yes, I walk because movement always makes me feel better. But really, I walk because on every single walk I feel love. Whether it's watching people's faces light up when they see my dog, or hearing the sound of a beautiful bird, or right now, all the gorgeous spring flowers. Waving at a neighbor, chatting with someone on the street, seeing kids in the schoolyard playing and hearing them laugh. I walk because I always find the answer to that song on my walk. Where is love? Love is everywhere. When I became a nomad, people thought I was nuts. I would feel lonely or displaced, they told me. But I didn't. When I landed in a tiny town where I knew no one on the day lockdown happened, how did I survive? Walking, waving at folks, standing 6 feet apart and getting to know my neighbors. Now I live in the most amazing neighborhood where I have the best group of friends who range from their 30s to their 70s. If that's not proof that love is everywhere, I don't know what is. So if that's true, how did we get so angry as a nation? I admit I'm shocked by the anger that's now the norm. The kind of comments that crop up on Facebook are still unfathomable to me. I would have been sent to my room for a year if I'd said the kind of horrible things people now write on social media. It's mean, angry, the grammar is terrible. It's name-calling at its worst. Now, I grew up surrounded by clever, witty, observant people who could throw shade and snark with the best of them. These people weren't saints. My stepmother, Coral Brown, became famous for what were called Coral stories. After someone left a party, Coral would sum them up with a nasty, funny turn of phrase that would then circle the London theater world for months. People both dreaded and loved leaving a party before Coral because being the subject of a Coral story, even if it wasn't exactly complimentary, meant you had been seen. And everyone knew that underneath her rapier wit, Coral had a heart of gold. She would take that wit and skewer anyone who messed with someone she loved. Perhaps my favorite instance of this happened at a party in LA when a Hollywood screenwriter questioned the writing ability of her dear friend, writer Alan Bennett. Now, here's my snark. How any Hollywood screenwriter of any ilk could think they could hold a candle to the brilliant Alan Bennett is beyond me. And if you don't know his work, look it up. Watch or read or listen to something written by Alan Bennett. In any case, this screenwriter came up to Coral after she'd won a BAFTA, the British Academy Award, for Best Actress in a television movie Bennett wrote for and about her. The screenwriter said, "Oh, Miss Brown, you were simply marvelous in An Englishman Abroad. I absolutely loved your performance. It was pitch perfect. But I wasn't too sure about the writing." Now, I wasn't there, but in my mind, the room falls silent as Coral says, in a voice that could be heard in Honolulu, "You weren't too sure about the writing." Her dramatic pause here to make sure everyone in the room was listening would have made Harold Pinter proud. "You weren't too sure about the writing." Then she pinned him with a Coral look, one I knew all too well. "You couldn't write fuck on a dusty Venetian blind." Oh, I love that story for so many reasons. First of all, how on earth did she come up with that one-liner on the spur of the moment? And I love it because she never failed to come to the aid of a friend. And I love it because it's funny. But it set me up to believe that judgment of others is not only okay, it's warranted. A few years ago, my best friend, who is a very, very funny person, and I were walking along slinging clever one-liners about the people we knew. Their clothes, partners, foibles. We loved doing this. Suddenly she turned to me and said, "I don't think we can keep doing this." "Doing what?" I asked her. "Making fun of other people. We keep saying we're trying to be better, focus on our spiritual practices, be kinder, more grateful. How does this fit with that?" I stared at her as if she'd told me I had 3 eyes but could now only use 2 of them. Because she was right. So what did I say to her from my place of enlightenment and wisdom? "Then what are we going to talk about? Will we even be interesting people?" She laughed at me and said, "I have no idea, but it's the right thing to do." It was. So we walked home in silence. It took us a while, I'm sorry to say, to find other conversations as much fun or as interesting as exercising our clever wits at the expense of others. But as we did, we realized we felt so much better. When I was growing up, I was as scared of Coral's wit and temper as the next person. And for me, an insecure preteen, teenager, then 20-something, being the perpetual subject of a Coral story was not a claim to fame. It was miserable. But I put up with it for 4 reasons. My dad loved Coral, and she loved him. I loved Coral. I admired her, was awed by her, and I knew she loved me. I also knew that she developed and honed that wit because she was afraid and insecure, and her wit was her armor. What I learned after giving up my judgment of others through my wit with my best friend Pamela is that taking off our armor, whatever it may be, the armor we've developed because we're so afraid that we're not loved, not lovable, not capable of loving, is really, really hard. But we have to do it. Because when we do, we realize love is all around us. Truly. Trust me on this. Trust me that sometimes we have to give up the hard stuff to answer the question, where is love? Love is everywhere. So I hope you'll tune in to my next episode when we start to unpack what love is. Love with the big L, that is. Thanks for listening.